for this lesson, we're going to be reviewing the area of regular shapes. This shouldn't be anything new for you guys. It's simply to help you prepare for our next lesson, which is finding the area of composite figures. So we're going to jump right in for this first one, and that's called a parallelogram. So a parallelogram has to have each diagonal forms two equal triangles, and each parallelogram has two pairs of parallel sides. So if you guys think back to parallel sides, or if these two lines here were extended, they would never touch. And that's the same thing with these two here. If they're extending, they will not ever touch. So our formula for a parallelogram is going to be A equals BH. So A stands for area, and if you want to write that up here, that would probably be helpful. B is your base. H is your height. So you're multiplying the base and the height together to get your area. A rectangle is 4 straight sides and 4 right angles, which you can see they are marked, and that means they are all the same length. So for a rectangle, we're going to use A equals LW, and that is length and width. Now we have a square, which is 4 equal straight sides and 4 right angles. So those are marks showing that they are the same length there. And if I go back up here, you can kind of see, it's hard to tell, but there are 2 lines here. So those are the exact same size, and since those are just 1 line, those are the same side length. Whereas here they are all 1, and so they match completely. For a square, we're going to use A equals S squared. So that S is going to stand for your side length. Next, we have a triangle. A triangle is a polygon with 3 edges and 3 vertices. So your vertices are your points. And then you have your edges here, which are similar to the sides. And we're going to use A equals 1/2 base times height. And the reason we use this formula, the 1/2 is important because if we go back up here to where we have parallelogram, it says each diagonal forms 2 equal triangles. So if you were to cut this in half here, you would see that there's a triangle here and a triangle there, which is where the 1/2 comes into play. It is half of this shape. A trapezoid typically has no lines of symmetry, at least 1 pair of parallel sides, and here's your parallel sides. If they extend, they will not ever touch, and the parallel sides are your bases. So the formula for this one is probably the longest, and it's 1/2 times H times the quantity of base 1 plus base 2. Oops, sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't see that on there. So we have base 1 and base 2, and then your height is labeled. The height is what's going to connect your 2 bases, and I want you to make a note of that. Okay, so now we're going to look at the examples below. Here it says we're going to find the area of parallelograms, rectangles, and squares. These are probably the most simple ones. So here we have a parallelogram. We're going to come back up here, and it says the formula for a parallelogram is area equals base times height. In order to get all the points and to get credit on a problem, you have to list the formula, show your work, put the answer, and your label. So here, the base is 9 inches and the height is 15. Now, if you get those mixed up, you're going to get the same answer, but it is important that you can recognize the two. So 9 times 15, we're just plugging them in. And 9 times 15 is going to give you 135. So now we have to label it. Anytime we are labeling anything with area, we can't just leave it as inches. It has to be inches squared, or meters squared, centimeters squared. Okay? So now we have to identify this shape here. This is going to be a rectangle. So we're going to use A equals L times W. And over here, it's easy to miss, but it does say inches. So this is 7 inches and 4 inches. Here is your length and your width. So very much like the parallelogram, you're multiplying those two numbers together and you get 7 times 4, which is going to give you 28. Again, that's going to be counted wrong if you leave it as that. It is 28 inches squared. Okay. The next one, we see a square. And we know that because we have 9 here and 9 there. That means all 4 sides are going to be the same. If we want to look back at this one here, we could put a 1 line there showing that the 7 inches is your length on both of those. And we could put 2 lines here, which would mean both of those sides are 4 inches. Okay, so over here, we had the formula for a square as A equals S squared. Now, if you were to do length times width, you would still get the same answer. However, this is going to be the proper formula for you to use. So we're going to take one of the sides, which is 9, and we're going to square it. 9 squared is going to be the same as 9 times 9, which is going to give you 81. So it's 81 yards squared. When you have this wrote down, go ahead and flip to the next page. And now we're going to be focused on area of triangles. So we have 1/2 base times height as our formula for an area of a triangle. Now what you see here, we only need 2 numbers, but there are 4 different numbers there. So we have to determine what is the base and what is the height. So the base and the height are going to connect and make a right angle. So you're going to see that 8 is your base, and it's not 5.1 that makes the right angle, but it is 5. So therefore, 5 is your height. So we have 1/2 times 8 times 5. And you could probably do that in your head. 8 times 5 is 40. Half of 40 is going to give you 20. Which is what we're going to get in the calculator too. So it's going to be 20 feet squared. I want you guys to pause the video and I want you to attempt the next 3 on your own. Alright, so we have our formula here. First thing you have to write. We are going to find our right angle. So what we see is this triangle looks upside down. So we have 9 as the base. 24 is not your height because that's not what connects to make a right angle. It is 12. So we're going to have 1/2 times 9 times 12. And you're going to get 54. So it's going to be 54 meters squared. Okay, the next one, we have another triangle, so it's A equals 1/2 base times height. The more you guys repeat this, the more you're going to memorize it, and memorizing it will help you on your test. So again, lots of extra numbers there. Find your right angle, which is right here. So we have our base, and then our height, which connects to make that. So it's 1/2 times 36 times 12. And you're going to get 216. Do not leave that as your answer. Make sure you label it. So it's 216 meters squared. Okay, now we have our last one. Again, it's a triangle. This one is a little more difficult because there's that extra number there. This is not the base. This is showing you how to configure the height. So your base is really going to be 16. And then your height is this piece over here. So it is going to be 6. So we have 1/2 times 16 times 6. And you're going to get 48, so it is 48 centimeters squared. Okay, when you have the triangles portion finished, go ahead and look at the bottom part, which is area of trapezoids. So we know from that first page that our formula is A equals 1/2 times your height times the quantity of base 1 plus base 2. So what we have to determine is where are our two bases. You might think it's 15 and 15.8, but if you look back, the height connects your two bases. So we also need to determine what is the height, and that height has to make a right angle. This piece here does not make a right angle. Okay? So 15 is actually going to be your height. The two bases also have to be parallel. If you were to extend this side here, it's going to run into this side right here. Therefore, you can't use that as a base. If we look at 8.5 and 13.5, if those are extended, they're never going to touch. And it doesn't matter which is base 1 and which is base 2. So now you can plug it in there. We have 1/2 times 15, and then you're going to add 8.5 plus 13.5. Okay, so we have 1/2 times 15, and I like to go ahead and add what's in the parentheses here together and then multiply. So we get 22. And now you can type that in. 1/2, I'm going to use the decimal point 5, it's the same thing. And I get 165. So it's going to be 165 centimeters squared. I want you to pause the video and I want you to try to identify the height and your two bases on this problem right here. Okay, so again, the height connects your two bases, and the height also makes a right angle with it. So right here, it is not 5 and it's not 4.5. It's going to be 4.4 as your height, which means the bases are going to be 6 and 9.5. So now we're just plugging it in and typing it in the calculator. Now I know 6 plus 9.5 is 15.5, so I'm going to have 1/2 times 4.4 times 15.5. And we're going to get 34.1. So once you add your label, it's going to be 34.1 meters squared. Okay, looking at the last two here, I want you to pause the video and try these two yourself. So first I find my right angle, and this dotted line will represent your height, which means the height is 6. These two sides are parallel to each other, so we're going to use those as our bases. Again, write your formula down, and there's other ways you can write this formula, but this is just the way I always do it. So we have 1/2 times your height, which is 6, and then we add the bases together, 21 plus 6. You should know 21 plus 6 is 27, so we have 1/2 times 6 times 27. Oops. And you're going to get 81. So it's going to be 81 meters squared. Okay, now looking at the next one, here is my right angle, which connects my two bases. So 8.2 is your height, 2.4 is my first base, 9 is my second. Okay, so we're going to plug it all in. .4 plus 9 is going to give you 11.4. So now we're going to type all of that in. And we're going to get 46.74. So we have 46.74. MI is going to be miles. So miles squared. One thing that I want to prepare you for on your assignment, on a couple of your questions, you're going to see a number such as, let me just draw a rectangle here. And you'll have a little line by it. That means 2 feet. So you could either do it as, write it as 2 feet or with a little dash up there. You also might see where there's 2, and that is going to be 2 inches. So please keep that in mind when you are labeling on your assignment. Okay, so now you guys can go ahead and begin your assignment, and it's going to be due tomorrow.